Hello there, a very good evening and welcome to another edition of Primetime News on TV1. I'm Charlene Benedict for the News First team.
And I'm Mariam Ganavijaya. First up, please a look at your headlines.
Strike by Locomotive Operating Engineers Association continues. 119 train journeys cancelled. 18-year-old dies after falling from a train. Railway services declared an essential service. Will former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa return to politics? Church objects to appointing another committee to investigate the Easter Sunday attacks. Sarat Kage says Channel 4 has distorted his statements. Sri Lanka take on India in nail-biting Asia Cup match.
On to your lead story this evening. Sri Lanka declared railway services an essential service with effect from midnight via an extraordinary gazette issued by the President's Secretary. This decision is to be taken in response to the strike launched by the Locomotive Operating Engineers Association of Sri Lanka Railways.
Now, Mariam, as always, the strike crippled railway services and severely inconvenienced commuters. I believe many of our viewers might have even experienced this inconvenience while on their way to work and on their way back home today. However, connected to this incident is the fact that a teenager died after falling off the roof of a train at the Horapet railway station today.
This is the lifeless body of a teenager, the only son who was dropped off alive by his father at the Hunupitiya railway station in Gampaha. 18-year-old Dinit Tinduvara always made his way to the Gampaha railway station to board the 6-5 office train to reach Colombo, where he engages in his higher education. Dinit Tinduvara was following a plumbing program at a technical training institute in Moratuwa until his death.
මං ගිහින් දාලා ඉවරලා මං කිව්වා 6:45 තියෙන කෝස් එකට යන්න වෙලා මදි කියලා ගෙදර යන්න කියලා අම්මට මං ගිහින් කිව්වා අම්මා කෝල් කරලා පුතේ ගෙදර වරින් කියලා. අද යන්න ඕන කියලා තමයි ගියේ. අයියෝ මේ ඉට් එක තමයි මේ දේරම දෙවුනේ නැත්නම් පුතා යනවා 6:05 කෝච්චිය හැමදාම ගිහලා වෙලාවට එතෙන්ට යනවා කෝස් එකට.
The train that operates at 6:05 in the morning did not operate on this fateful day. A strike by the Locomotive Operating Engineers Association of Sri Lanka Railways delayed the train to 6:45 a.m. When this particular train reached the Gampaha railway station, it was already packed with office workers and school students, and the only place available for anyone to travel was the roof. One person had recorded footage of the train as it reached the Ragama railway station, and Dinit Tinduvara was seen on the train. Unfortunately, his journey was cut short as he collided with the roof of the Horapet railway station, which is located between Ragama and Kalaniya. The lifeless body of Dinit Tinduvara was taken to the Hunupitiya railway station in the same train.
එනකොට මාළ උඩ ආවේ කෝච්චියේ මාළ උඩ ඇවිල්ලා එතන පාලම උඩ වැදුනා වැදෙනකොටම වැටුණා ඔළුව පාත් කරා.
Dinit Tinduvara, a resident of Moragoda in Gampaha, was a brother to two sisters. As the only boy in the family, he also worked in a garage whenever possible while engaging in higher studies in order to support his family. A young man who was also travelling on the same train posted the following on Facebook. Translation of the Facebook post.
The Kandy 4 train at 4:30 was converted to a semi-train due to the strike. It was packed and people could not even travel on the footboard. It was raining and there was no place to hold on to. When the train takes a bend, the fear of death creeps in. Everyone wanted to get to work early. Before this young boy fell, another person fainted inside the train. How many other lives were at risk like this?
End of the translation of the post. Trade unions and officials are passing the blame onto each other over the strike that claimed the life of a teenager.
We do not anticipate any harm. We have informed the public to follow necessary precautions and we appeal to the public to remain safe. We did not anticipate this. The authorities who delay providing a solution to the issue must be held responsible for this.
As the country's Minister of Transport, the responsibility lies with Minister Bandula Gunawardena, who is also the cabinet spokesperson. At the media briefing to announce cabinet decisions, the minister was flanked by the General Manager of Railways and other officials. He opened the media briefing with a moment of silence for the teenager who died under tragic circumstances.
A country that is in trouble and unable to recover will not sustain with trade union terrorism. If I am responsible for the death, I will resign immediately. A meeting was scheduled for 4 p.m. tomorrow and yet they orchestrated this strike as a means of terrorism and it led to the death of a boy. All those factions are responsible for this.
The minister was levelling these allegations against the trade unions.
එතුමා ඉස්සරහා වාඩි වෙන්න නෙමෙයි දන ගස්සන්න ඕන මේ නිලධාරීන්. මෙතුමාලා කරන්නේ හැමදාම හදිස්සිය මිනිස්සු ගෙන්නනවා අවසට වර්ජනය කරනවා.
මේ පිළිබඳ දුම්රිය සාමාන්‍ය අධිකාරී ඇතුළු උසස් නිලධාරීන් වගේ උත්තරකරුවෝ නෙමෙයි. මොකද සාමාන්‍ය අධිකාරීවරයා නිරන්තරයෙන් මේ සාකච්ඡා පවත්වලා තියෙනවා.
දුම්රිය දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව වක්කීම් බාර ගන්නවද? වන්දි ගෙවීමක් සිදු කරනවද?
දුම්රියේ මගින් සමහරට ෆුඩ් බෝඩ් එක යනවා. වහලේ උඩ යනවා. ඒවා ඒ සාමාන්‍ය තත්ත්වයක් නෙවෙයි ඒක.
නේ සාමාන්‍ය තත්ත්වය අසාමාන්‍ය තත්ත්වය බවට පත් කළේ කවුද?
වහලේ උඩ
දුම්රිය දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ ඔබතුමාලාගේ සේවකයෝ නේද?
අපේ සේවකයෝ නිසා තමයි ඒක වෙලා තියෙන්නේ.
Thousands of Sri Lankans were severely inconvenienced by the trains that operated in the morning, which claimed the life of a teenager and put the lives of many others at risk. Over 119 train journeys were cancelled during the day. Railway Superintendent MJ Indipolake said all trains that did operate were delayed.
කියලා වැඩක් නෑ අර ළමයාගේ ජීවිතෙන් තමයි ඒ ළමයා වන්දි ගෙව්වේ.
අදක්ෂ පාලනයක් තියෙන රටක මේ වගේ දේවල් වෙනවා. ඊ අපි ගියේ තනි කකුලෙන් හිටගෙන. ඒගොල්ලෝ ප්‍රාඩෝ වල යන්න ඕන, මොන්ටිරෝ වල යන්න ඕන, අපි තනි කකුලෙන් හිටගෙන යන්න ඕන. තව විපත්ති මිසා සහනයක් බලාගෙන ඉන්න එපා.
This was the situation at the Dematagoda and Maradana railway stations.
අවසර ට්‍රේන් නැහැ. එකපාරටම කියනවා ට්‍රේන් නැහැ කියලා කියනවා. මිනිස්සු සම්පූර්ණ අසරණයි. ඒකට එක්කෙනෙක් දැන් මැරලා මැරලා. ඒ ජීවිතවල වග කියන්න කෙනෙක් නැහැ මේ රටේ.
Passengers were also inconvenienced at many other railway stations. Why did the Locomotive Operating Engineers Association of Sri Lanka Railways engage in this strike?
There's no salary scale and the recruitment process has not been formalized. Therefore, there are no recruitments taking place. There are issues when it comes to promotions. In addition, there are issues surrounding the recruitment process as well. We have not been given a proper solution so far. A meeting is scheduled for tomorrow and we will attend the meeting. If the minister cannot solve this, who else can?
ඒතකොට ගරු අමාත්‍යතුමාටත් මේක ඉදිරිපත් කළා මේක විසඳ ගන්න බැයි නම් අපි මේක කාටද කියන්න ඕනේ?
This was the response by the Minister of Transport.
I spoke with the trade union leaders and told them that we can solve any problem after discussions. There are some problems that can never be solved because this is a state department. Certain matters are not approved by many of the commissions, including the Commission on Wages. So as a solution to that, I converted this department to an authority. The most powerful authority in this regard is the Cabinet Subcommittee led by the Prime Minister, which is gathered once every every 2 weeks. In addition to that, government officials could also explain their problems when the trade union representatives were given the opportunity. The Cabinet Subcommittee has given that appointment to the trade union representatives at 4 p.m. tomorrow. When that is scheduled to take place tomorrow, around 84 drivers engaged in a strike yesterday, possibly under political influence or any other influence. I am clearly stating that this is done to incite railway terrorism. It is murder if anyone tries to take the lives of unarmed, innocent people who have nothing to do with it. Earlier, I filed a complaint with the CID against 2 other trade union leaders. I also filed a complaint with the Bribery Commission to investigate their assets. I am not sure what the CID is doing. I will be informing the Inspector General of Police in a letter that the CID must launch a complete and impartial investigation on this issue. To put an end to the people facing this issue, I will be requesting the President to make railways an essential service from midnight today. Maximum action will be taken against anyone who makes attempts to sabotage this.
කරන්න හදන ඕනෙම කෙනෙක්ට විරුද්ධව ගන්න පුළුවන් උපරිම ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගන්නවා.
Now, people who were travelling home this evening were also left stranded at railway stations for several hours.
Almost all trains that began from the Fort railway station were delayed. The police and the army were deployed for the safety of passengers and the trains that operated. Another passenger travelling from Fort to Rambukkana was injured after he fell off the train. According to a correspondent, he was hospitalized for minor injuries.
The Daily Mirror reports that former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa will be backing a new political party.
Now, the Daily Mirror says that former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa had given his blessings to the Maubima Janata Party led by businessman Dilith Jayavira.
The Daily Mirror reported that former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who has maintained a stark silence since his resignation in July last year, is now eyeing to recapture and strengthen his failed image through a new political party, which is now led by one of his close aides and businessmen who declared his entry into politics yesterday. The Daily Mirror says that Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who has been given all the privileges and facilities as a former president despite being forced out of office by the citizens, is reportedly backing the Maubima Janata Party, which was recently purchased by his close aide Dilith Jayavira. The Daily Mirror said that according to sources in the Election Commission, the Maubima Janata Party recently changed its constitution and elected new office bearers after Jayavira took over the party. The party is also now open to accepting new members, and it is learnt that a hunt is on for educated individuals, an attempt similar to Rajapaksha's Vyatmaga. A senior leader of the Maubima Janata Party, Hemukumara Nanayakara, told the Daily Mirror that the Maubima Janata Party and the Aramuna organization of Dilith Jayavira had joined hands to contest future elections as the Maubima Janata Party and said they were working together towards that end. He also said that they will contest the upcoming presidential election as well. Businessman Dilith Jayavira responded to this via a Facebook post.
Former media advisor to the Sri Lankan President Sarat Kage says that the Channel 4 had distorted his comments with regard to the Easter Sunday attacks.
He expressed these views during a special media briefing at the Foundation Institute in Colombo.
As I recall, in March 2022, when the Aragale was underway, Faraz Shaukat Ali contacted me and told me that I had to be interviewed for a television program. When I asked him what channel it was for, he said it was for a channel called London ITN. A date was reserved and 2 foreigners visited my residence, saying that they are from London ITN, and the discussion went on for more than 2 hours. Faraz was also there. I was questioned about the Easter attacks from the beginning of the program, and they asked me how Mahinda Rajapaksa won the elections in 2005 and 2010. I told that he was the most popular leader back then. They only included those 2 parts of that interview in the broadcast, but they show me with Frederica Jans, Ambika Satkuranathan, Azad Maulana, Lal Vikramatunga and Nishant Silva Kandappa. I spoke of Zahran and the Muslim extremism on Christchurch on the 15th of March. 43 Muslim worshippers were killed in a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand by an armed man. Around 30 others were seriously injured. This was on the 15th of March. I then told that it could also be a reason why Zahran's attack hastened. Channel 4 completely ignored Zahran. There is no one else except for Gotabaya Rajapaksa and some other people. So Channel 4 completely distorted my statement. The two foreigners who interviewed me had stayed at a hotel in Mount Lavinia. As far as I have heard, it is Faraz who had paid the bill. So I asked Faraz where the people from London ITN are now. He never mentioned that it was Channel 4 until today. When I contacted him after this incident, he was in London. He sent me a message saying, "Can I call you back?" When he called me back, I told him that this was completely wrong and that my statement had been completely distorted.
මං කිව්වා මේක සම්පූර්ණ වැරදි. මගේ කතාව සම්පූර්ණ විකෘති කරලා.
The citizens of the People's Struggle Movement gathered at the United Nations office and demanded that investigations with regard to the claims made by the Channel 4 documentary be carried out with UN assistance. After handing over the letter of request, they engaged in a silent protest. An investigation with the involvement of the United Nations is necessary to investigate the claims made by Channel 4. The government should act to ensure national security. Justice should be served for the victims of these attacks. The citizens of the country still have unanswered questions on this because justice has not prevailed for the Easter attacks. Why is the government late? We would like to say to Ranil Rajapaksa, don't play with the lives of the victims. The Archdiocese of Colombo rejected the proposal to appoint a new parliamentary select committee or a retired judge to carry out investigations related to the Easter Sunday terror attacks.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුව විසින් පත් කරන තවත් පාර්ලිමේන්තු තීරීම් කාර්ය සභාවක් හෝ ජනාධිපතිවරයා පත් කරනු ලබන විශ්‍රාම
We do not believe that an unbiased investigation will be carried out by the Parliamentary Select Committee that will be appointed by the Parliament and the committee led by a retired Supreme Court judge that will be appointed by the President. The appointment of such bodies will become yet another waste of public funds and a futile exercise. Therefore, we reject that proposal. We proposed a program to expedite the investigation. First, an unbiased, fair, transparent and broad investigation should be conducted regarding the important details of the conspiracy revealed through the Channel 4 documentary, all those persons and matters that were revealed through the investigations and commission reports that were appointed so far but not properly investigated thus far. This should be done under the supervision of an independent international investigative team. A special local investigation team should be appointed for this. Create the background to ensure an independent investigation. Persons who are being investigated and hold senior posts within the intelligence services and police should be suspended from service till the conclusion of the investigation. That is ridiculous. The president is the president to all the citizens of the country. The president should not be talking about groups of people belonging to certain religions or services rendered to them. That is his duty and responsibility. Now he is saying that no matter what wrong he commits, the people should keep quiet about it. We are not ready to do that.
India has called on Sri Lanka to ensure that the fundamental freedoms and human rights of all its citizens are fully protected.
Permanent representative of India to the UN made these comments during the 54th session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva.
India has consistently supported Sri Lanka's effort towards relief, rehabilitation, resettlement and reconstruction process in Sri Lanka since 2009. India has provided multi-pronged support totaling more than $4 billion to Sri Lanka to tide over its economic challenges. We hope that the government of Sri Lanka will fulfill the aspirations of Tamils for equality, justice and peace and its commitment to implement the 13th Amendment and conduct provincial elections to ensure a life of respect and dignity for Tamils in Sri Lanka. We urge the government of Sri Lanka to work meaningfully towards early implementation of its commitments to ensure that the fundamental freedoms and human rights of all its citizens are fully protected.
However, Russia says the artificial hyping of human rights situation in Sri Lanka is counterproductive.
We think it's counterproductive to continue the practice of artificially hyping up the human rights situation in Sri Lanka. Despite internal political difficulties, the country's authorities have shown significant progress in stabilizing the economic, social and financial situation in the country and have made significant progress towards national reconciliation. Measures are being taken to expand the space for the functioning of civil society and independent media. The authorities have shown their willingness to build mutually respectful cooperation with international human rights mechanisms. Legislation is being brought into line with international standards when it comes to combating corruption and terrorism, and the system of governance and administration of justice is being improved. Sadly, as has often been the case, OHCHR prefers to ignore these and many other positive changes, though, and we again call on OHCHR to refrain from the practice of politicizing the situation in certain countries, including in Sri Lanka, and focus on providing them technical assistance in the human rights sphere.
China said that it supports Sri Lanka in safeguarding national sovereignty and independence.
China appreciates Sri Lanka's efforts to promote and protect human rights, including reconciliation and reconstruction, combating terrorism, safeguarding the rights of vulnerable groups, promoting economic recovery, and improving people's living standards. We firmly support Sri Lanka in safeguarding national sovereignty, independence, social stability, and promoting economic development. We believe that HRC should respect sovereignty and political independence of all countries and the efforts made by them to promote and protect human rights and play its role for constructive dialogue and cooperation.
Pakistan called on international financial institutions to assist Sri Lanka in its continued efforts to tackle the multiple challenges that it faces.
We express our resolute support and solidarity with the government and people of Sri Lanka on their path towards stabilization, recovery and development. We also commend the steady progress that Sri Lanka continues to make in fulfilling its human rights obligations. We also commend Sri Lanka's commitment to remain engaged with the human rights machinery. While encouraging Sri Lanka to stay the course on reforms and its efforts to promote rights and domestic accountability, we call on states and the international financial institutions to assist Sri Lanka in its continued efforts to tackle the multiple challenges that it faces.
News first with the people.
Verit Research says that Sri Lanka has completed 19.4% of the 2015 UNHRC resolution commitments.
The United Nations Human Rights Council monitor published by Verit Research said that Sri Lanka has completed 19.4% of the measures it committed to implement under the United Nations Human Rights Council Resolution 30/1 as of the end of August 2023. However, 61.1% of the commitments in the resolution, which was co-sponsored by Sri Lanka, have seen poor or no progress 8 years since it was adopted in October 2015. The UNHRC monitor Verit Research is the first and only monitor of its kind which objectively tracks the implementation of Resolution 30/1. Resolution 30/1 contained 36 distinct actionable commitments. These commitments fall into 5 broad thematic categories: rights and rule of law, transitional justice and reconciliation, security and demilitarization, international engagement and power sharing. The 7 completed commitments are: 1. Engage in broad transitional justice processes. 2. Establish the Office on Missing Persons. 3. Establish the Office for Reparations. 4. Sign and ratify the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances. 5. Criminalize enforced disappearances. 6. Continue engagement between the Government of Sri Lanka and the OHCHR. And 7. Cooperate with Special Procedure Mandate holders.
The ambassadors of India, China, France and Japan to Sri Lanka were on the same stage in Colombo for the geopolitical cartographer discussion.
The Geopolitical Cartographer is an international research foundation specializing in the Indian Ocean, and the discussion in Colombo took place under the theme Recent High-Level Visits and Their Indian Ocean Aspects. Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe, former Speaker Kharu Jayasuriya were among those present. The discussion was hosted by Foreign Secretary Aruni Vijayawardena and featured the ambassadors of India, China, France and Japan on the same stage.
The domestic debt restructuring process is now nearing completion. We still have to enact the Central Bank Act, and following that we can finish the domestic debt restructuring process and convert the treasury bills into the bonds. We still will have to complete the bilateral debt restructuring, which in the first round, where we needed the assurances, the Paris Club, India and China came forward expeditiously to assist us, and we're hoping for the same support in this round as well.
Japan's ambassador highlighted his country's vision for the Indo-Pacific.
Japan's vision of free and open Indo-Pacific FOIP. It is an important pillar of our diplomacy. The core principles of our FOIP is defending freedom and the rule of law and respect for diversity, inclusiveness and openness. That the vision of the FOIP is an inclusive concept open to all countries that share its basic principles. As the international community faces various challenges, the FOIP becomes increasingly important to steer the world towards cooperation rather than confrontation or division. And Japan would like to continue our dialogues and cooperate with Sri Lanka as an equal partner based on this concept.
The Indian High Commissioner stressed historical linkages in the Indian Ocean region.
India is, in a sense, powerhouse of economic growth. So this rapid growth and transformation of India is technological advancement, and Sri Lanka's own trajectory towards a sustainable growth now coming into future. It gives us an enormous opportunity to usher in prosperity not only for both the countries but for the region as a whole. If we look historically, the Indian Ocean region as a whole has been the highway of interlinkages, spanning multitude of geographies. It has been a vibrant economic zone, but also a community founded on culture and history. The current effort of India and its leadership is essentially to rediscover the role of the region, to work with other like-minded partners in rediscovering this historical role of the Indian Ocean region as the whole of Asia and Asia Pacific powers the economic growth and prosperity in the 21st century. What India is doing in its bilateral relationship with Sri Lanka, in a sense, captures our vision and the centrality, the central thrust of our effort for the entire Indian Ocean region.
The French ambassador said France is working hard on Sri Lanka's debt restructuring efforts.
France is also a country with stakes in the Indian Ocean, is the basis for our call for an open, inclusive and prosperous Indian Ocean. The assessment that we have common stakes with Sri Lanka, and that increasing cooperation with Sri Lanka is in our common interest. Sri Lanka is currently in a difficult economic situation. And despite this situation, Sri Lanka has shown a great leadership on green economy, on sustainable development, high ambitious targets about green energy with proposals in the university on climate change. France is the fourth bilateral creditor of Sri Lanka. The French president expressed, and this was important for us, our commitment for a rapid, inclusive, transparent and fair restructuring of the debt. And this is something we are working hard on, and on which we hope to achieve results very, very soon.
China's ambassador once again dismissed claims of a debt trap.
The vast majority of the Indian Ocean region are developing countries and face the same development goals task as China. All the countries, regardless of size or location, should take a broad view and do more think about the future of humanity while pursuing one's own interests. Sri Lanka and the region is facing today is not so-called the debt trap, but the non-development trap. What Sri Lanka needs is not only debt restructuring at this moment, but more importantly, the economy restructuring in the future. China is always Sri Lanka's reliable strategic partner and appreciates that Sri Lanka has always been friendly to China and has stood by China on issues related to China's core interests. And China also firmly supports Sri Lanka in safeguarding his sovereignty, independence, and national dignity.
The geopolitical cartographer aims to promote the study, research and analysis of the geopolitical, geoeconomic and maritime affairs development in the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean and the connected landmass, which are redrawing the global political order.
Sri Lanka was sued in the US by a bondholder after the South Asian nation defaulted on its debt for the first time in history while struggling to stop an economic meltdown. Now, this lawsuit that was filed by the Hamilton Reserve Bank over the settlement of an ISP of $250 million with interest has come back to the limelight.
Based on the revelations made by the Financial Times, many factions have demanded an investigation to ascertain if several individuals exchanged internal information to benefit certain parties.
Hamilton Reserve Bank Limited, which holds more than $250 million of Sri Lanka's 5.875% international sovereign bonds due July 25th, filed the suit in a New York federal court seeking full payment of the principal and interest. The Hamilton Reserve Bank owns over $250 million in principal amount of the $1 billion worth international sovereign bonds issued in 2012. The bonds matured on the 25th of July 2022. The Hamilton Reserve Bank is in St. Kitts and Nevis, and it is a small bank based in a country with 50,000 people with a GDP of almost $1 billion. The Financial Times says the US government suddenly and obliquely saying it wanted to get involved in the lawsuit because of who it thinks is driving this, a Chinese-American financier called Benjamin Wei. The Financial Times, quoting documents, notes that Benjamin Wei serves as the vice chairman of Fintech Holdings, an affiliate of the Hamilton Reserve Bank. The Financial Times quoted a tweet from Hamilton Reserve Bank saying that the Hamilton Reserve Bank expands into Sri Lanka and it fully supports the former central bank governor Ajit Nivad Cabral. The Financial Times also says that Benjamin Wei also sent a presentation to fellow Sri Lankan creditors with a similar image. It reports that according to the presentation made at that meeting, Cabral assured Wei that Sri Lanka would repay the 2022 bond in full and on time. Benjamin Wei had also noted that relying on such explicit guarantees directly represented by the Sri Lankan Central Bank, they bought the July 2022 ISB in large quantities, trusting Sri Lanka would safeguard at all costs its unblemished sovereign credibility since 1948, as assured directly by the CBSL governor himself. When the restructuring was announced in April 2022, Benjamin Wei had sent a letter to Sri Lanka's then-President Gotabaya Rajapaksa on a Hamilton Reserve Bank letterhead warning of the dire consequences of a sovereign default. The Financial Times says that according to the presentation, Fintech Holdings thought that the central bank governor saying a country won't default before it actually defaults is some kind of securities fraud.
It is a known fact that a group from Hamilton Reserve Bank visited Cabral in January. It was reported in local and international media. The secondary market value for Sri Lankan bond collapsed because of the fact that we defaulted. The bond worth $1 billion could have been purchased for half the price. Was an assurance given to Benjamin Way that the bonds will be settled in July 2022 and buy them for a lesser rate. They have filed a case against us. Was an assurance given that Sri Lanka will not declare bankruptcy and the payments will be made in July. The central bank governor must elaborate on this.
The People's Collective for Economic Justice visited the central bank, seeking the accuracy of these claims via the Right to Information Act.
We inquire into the status of the agreement between Hamilton Reserve Bank and the Central Bank of Sri Lanka regarding the transactions that took place in January 2022. Did they really get an additional profit? What was the profit? What was the deal behind that profit? Is the former Central Bank Governor of Sri Lanka behind it?
Russia handed over the first consignment of sunflower oil of a total donation worth $2 million to Sri Lanka in Colombo.
The first consignment of sunflower oil delivered as a donation from the Russian Federation to the government of Sri Lanka has arrived in Sri Lanka. The shipment is part of a total donation of $2 million.
Government has initiated combined mechanism to uplift the food security and nutrition level of the country among the people, because some of the people who were in the status of food secure became food insecure because of the economic recession prevailing in the country. The grant that we received from Russian Federation is help to us to provide assistance for targeted group or vulnerable families or households.
Country Director of the UN World Food Programme, Abdul Rahim Siddiqui, also expressed views at the event.
We have received a generous support of $2 million just for this response to the emergency operation that WFP had launched last year, and we have procured not only this 352 metric tons of sunflower oil, but I believe another shipment of around 117 metric tons should be arriving in January 2024. We have reached around 3.8 million people in Sri Lanka since last year. As you can see in this warehouse, we have food stocks. So we have provided food ration comprising of rice, dal and oil to the most vulnerable communities.
The Russian ambassador to Sri Lanka said Russia will continue to support Sri Lanka in future.
One of the purposes of my government, policy of my government, is to promote international cooperation in solving economic, social, cultural and humanitarian problems. In terms of these aspects, the Russian Federation never stays in the sidelines. Despite all the challenges faced by my country and unprecedented pressure of the sanctions, we are trying to support our friends, to continue our support, and our aim is always humanitarian. Our actions are based on the principles of respect of independence and non-interference into domestic affairs. We never imposed any conditions on aid. We live in troubled times marked by disease, drought, climate change and geopolitical instability. The only way out for nations is to come together, to collaborate where possible, to compromise where is needed.
The sunflower oil will be distributed through the United Nations World Food Programme as part of its emergency operation to support those affected by the country's economic crisis.
A satellite-based oil spill monitoring service for Sri Lanka was launched in Colombo.
A satellite-based oil spill monitoring service for Sri Lanka was launched in Colombo, and the Memorandum of Understanding for this project was signed by the Marine Environment Protection Authority with the Government of France.
This initiative serves as a beacon of hope in our collective responsible stewardship over Sri Lanka's marine resources. Our marine environment and national treasure not only sustains livelihoods but also plays a pivotal role in maintaining our planet's ecological system. We are entrusted with the duty of preserving it for both present and future generations.
The Oil Spill Detection Sri Lanka OSDS project will operate a marine spill detection service offering the capability to identify potential polluters for the Sri Lankan authorities, notably MIPA.
And on this occasion, the European Union, the French presidency of the Council, called for the adoption of a treaty for the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdictions. And 1 year later, this resulted in the adoption by the United Nations of the Treaty on the High Seas, which provides this commitment about the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity, and which aims to make 30% of the seas protected areas by 2030 in order to safeguard and restore marine resources.
This project, funded by the government of France, will be launched by a French company named CLS. CLS, a subsidiary of the French space agency CNES and of the CNP, is a worldwide company and pioneer provider of monitoring and surveillance solutions for the Earth since 1986.
U.S. Ambassador to Sri Lanka Julie Chung has stressed that healthcare workers carry a great responsibility. She made these comments recently when the International Institute of Health Sciences launched its IIHS Multiversity in Colombo.
The International Institute of Health Sciences launched its Multiversity through an innovative financial partnership with the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. The inauguration was graced by U.S. Ambassador to Sri Lanka Julie Chung and State Minister Dr. Suren Raghavan.
Healthcare workers carry a great responsibility to care for others, and the weight of this responsibility can feel especially heavy when facing a crisis, as Sri Lanka did during this past year. Amidst the power outages, food shortages, mass protests, there was always the hospital staff working late at night, caring for patients, doing their best to manage with medical supplies running low. I continue to hear stories of healthcare professionals in Sri Lanka facing the challenges today. At the same time, I also continue to hear stories of healthcare professionals, the heroes who carry on with quiet dedication, caring for their communities one day at a time.
The International Institute of Health Sciences Multiversity will serve as a hub for a diverse array of educational programs, collaborative research initiatives, and workshops that champion sustainability, innovation, and interdisciplinary learning.
The annual festival of the historic Nallur Kandaswami Kovil was held today with much pomp and pageantry in Jaffna for the 23rd day. The Sapparam festival was celebrated today.
Om Aruvam Uruvam Muruga Potri.
The Sapparam festival, which is an important part of the annual celebrations of the historic Nallur Kandaswami Kovil, was held today. The Sapparam festival is traditionally celebrated on the day before the Theru festival. Sapparam is a special flat-shaped vehicle that is used in the ceremony. Scores of devotees, both local and international, joined the festivities today and watched as the Sapparam vehicle travelled around the Kovil. These special celebrations were telecast on Sri Lanka's #1 Tamil language television channel, Shakti TV. Shakti TV will bring all the festivities from the Nallur Kandaswami Kovil of the Theru festival tomorrow. Shakti TV opened a special studio in Nallur to coincide with the Nallur festival, and several religious observances and cultural events were held at the studio today.
මෙවැනි උත්සවයකට ශක්ති TV සම්බන්ධ වෙන පළවෙනි අවස්ථාව නෙමෙයි.
This is not the first time Shakti TV is getting involved in a festival of this magnitude. The team has worked tirelessly to make this a success. For that, I must thank them first. This is only the beginning. We plan on connecting with people of this area in the future as well. There is no media network or company that is capable as ours to bring closer the north and south of Sri Lanka. I believe that if we can bring closer the north and the south, we can make Sri Lanka a leading country or even the #1 country in the world. We are here with a responsibility in mind. We are very happy that Shakti TV is able to celebrate this Nallur festival with such a large crowd of people.
ගංගාවක් මැද්දේ ශක්ති TV නල්ලෝර උත්සවය අපිට මෙවැනි ආකාරයට.
In more local developments, leader of the opposition Sajid Premadasa claims that extremism and terrorism should have no place in Sri Lanka.
We must defeat extremism. Extremism has no place in our country. Terrorism has no place in our country. Look at how religion has been used for political purposes. The whole country has been torn apart because of the greed to get the presidential chair. I would like to say to you, under a government of ours, if any race discriminates another race, if any religion discriminates another religion, and if differences are created among each other, we will consider it a criminal act. We need to remove political frogs from the political arena. When on our side I heard sounds like Sonic, tonic 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and when the opportunity came, he jumped onto the other side like a frog in greed for ministries. The victims of the Easter attack helplessly fell on their knees and leaned on the government.
The opposition leader made this statement at the 100th anniversary celebration of Zahira College, Galle.
Eastern Province Governor Senthil Thondaman recently met with the Chief Minister of Kerala during a visit to India.
Discussions between the Eastern Province Governor Senthil Thondaman and the Chief Minister of Kerala, Pinarayi Vijayan, focused on strengthening ties between the two regions. Chief Minister of Kerala also extended his best wishes to President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The Chief Minister of Kerala also accepted an invitation extended by the Governor of the Eastern Province to visit Sri Lanka in the near future to further enhance bilateral ties.
Trailblazing Mountaineer Jayanti Kurutumpala summited the Matterhorn in Europe.
Jayanti Kurutumpala successfully summited the Matterhorn on the 8th of September 2023. The climb was especially meaningful for Kurutumpala as it took place on her father's birthday. Her father passed away 9 years ago and she dedicated the climb to his memory. The Matterhorn is a challenging peak standing at 4,478 meters above sea level. Kurutumpala and her guide Nicole Berthon spent 8 days acclimatizing to the high altitude before attempting the summit. The climb itself was a grueling 10-hour trek, requiring them to ascend over steep rock and ice. Kurutumpala is a trailblazing mountaineer who has broken many barriers for women in the sport. She is the first Sri Lankan woman to summit Mount Everest, and she has also climbed other challenging peaks, such as Mount Kilimanjaro.
Another leg of the second phase of the LOLC Divvi program took place, centering the Mena district.
The LOLC Divvi program is taking place to support the Sri Lankan student population, and the second leg of the program aims to provide school books and stationery free for 1 year for government schools with less than 100 students. This worthy initiative is a collaboration between the LOLC group and the Ministry of Education. The Divvi Savya program took place centering the Madu and Mana education zones in the Mana district. 1,276 students from 17 public schools were given school books and stationery items free of charge. Students from the Patuvile Government Muslim Mixed School, Ilhadippidi Roman Catholic Tamil Vidyalaya and Shantipuram Tamil Vidyalaya were provided with school books and stationery. In addition, school books and stationery were provided to students from the Sachariyarpuram Roman Catholic Tamil Vidyalaya, Karadikuli Government Muslim Vidyalaya, Al Rimza Government Muslim Vidyalaya and the Ikra Primary Vidyalaya. School books and stationery items were also delivered to students from 10 other schools from the Madu Zonal Education Office. The LOLC Divvi Savya program will continue to support the future of the Sri Lankan student population. Divvi Savya, the second leg of the Divvi Savya program to provide much needed school books and stationery items to school children in Sri Lanka. The 13th of September, Jaffna.
Dai Darwange Anagate Winwin Divvi Savya, LOLC Prajasatkara Mehevara.
And in your cricket news update, the Super 4 match of the Asia Cup 2023 between Sri Lanka and India got underway at the R. Premadasa Stadium in Colombo today. Batting first, India were bowled out for 213 in 49.1 overs. Dunith Velalage took 5 wickets for 40. Charith Asalanka took 4 wickets for 18. TV1 is the official local broadcaster of the Asia Cup, and all matches are being broadcast live on TV1 and on www.sirsatv.lk.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News on TV1 for tonight.
Thank you very much for watching. Good night.